Hi, I'm Jon Leslie, and I'm here today with Tarrah Milo Wilson. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And she has been in the game industry for over 10 years in various roles as a producer, as a product manager, now currently a product manager working in VR.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind starting out with kind of giving us an idea of what your current role is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I have two roles actually. I'm both a product manager as well as a creative manager. So I work on a VR product, but I've also worked on AR products as well. So having come from games, there's a lot of synergy and kind of related concepts between games and working in AR VR. So it's a great kind of cutting edge technology to get into.
Yeah. Are you allowed to talk about any of the products that you've worked on in the past? Or?
I've worked on I would say that my overall career has been more focused on platforms that enable other people to be creative. So I'm really passionate about that. I love building tools for other people to express themselves or communicate, or just build fun experiences and stuff like that. So I'd say it's a little bit like not as traditional in terms of a gaming career, but it's something that I think is quite technical. So I would say it requires a high degree of technical knowledge and collaboration with a lot of software engineers.
Right. And you're more enabling the creatives.
Yeah.
With the tools that you help to produce.
Yeah.
Very cool. So to kick things off, you've been in game development for a long time now, right? So what would you say over the years have been and continue to be the biggest challenge with game production, biggest challenges with game production and game development?
I'll kind of focus a little more on my more recent experiences around kind of AR, VR work. Some of the really big challenges are when you're working on products that are very kind of nebulous, ambiguous. There's no playbook to tell you what to do. There's very few other products you can look towards and say, oh, we're building something like that.
If you're working on, you're in such an innovative space.
Yeah, exactly. There's no. It's hard to find, things that you can look towards to model your own strategy and way you work and stuff like that. So a lot of it is novel. You're just kind of coming up with, let's try this, let's try that. So flexibility is really important with that, and taking something that is very unstructured and making structure out of it and making productive projects out of it is kind of the big thing that I do really well.
Yeah, taking that nebulous unknown and actually creating a product, because you got to come up with something.
Right.
And so those being the challenges that you've seen and faced and continue to face, how in your various roles, how have you addressed those challenges from both a process standpoint and maybe even also from a tools standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a process standpoint, I would say our process is quite unique because there are some similarities with game development, of course. We are building 3D immersive experiences. So in that regard, we have the same sorts of production requirements around building 3D assets, building environments, and having features go along with enabling some of those things as well on the software side. So there's a lot of similarities with game development, and it's really, so that's good. We have something to draw from. I would say in terms of process though, we do a lot more, I don't want to say finding the fun, but finding the compelling scenarios, prototyping. We do a lot of prototyping. So what that really comes down to is organizing all the prototypes and having a lot of work that ends up not shipping. So
there's a lot of trial and error.
Yes, yeah,
a lot of experimentation, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like here's my list of tasks, execute on them and ship them. It's not that at all.
It's in no way, shape, or form a repeatable process.
Right. Yeah.
You're dealing
exactly.
with a lot of unknowns of not only how to build what you need to build, but what it's going to be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So managing that kind of process via both, kind of actions that you help the team do and tools that you use, I come down again to that flexibility part, right? Where it's like, well, in this phase of the project, we're doing tons of prototypes, many of which will not ship. So we need to be able to handle that process and have clarity on what's actually moving forward and what isn't. So driving clarity is a big part of my process that I work on. And then tools that can adapt to that, right? Because if you have a tool that's very kind of not easily flexible to meet your needs, and I've had tools in the past that were like that, and it was hard to use because our process is different, or this week it's one way and a month from now it's different, another way. So flexibility is really
you don't
critical.
want to have to call a tools administrator to come change your workflow if something changes. You need something that's adaptable, flexible, because things are changing all the time.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Like we would not, we need to be self-service. We can't rely on, some external tools team, or even, hiring someone to do something like that. It's just not where we want to invest. We want to invest in people building the features and then
empower those people and give them what they need to do what they do.
Yeah.
What would you say what's uniquely different about Favro that makes it so well suited to game development and also game platform development, tools development?
Yeah, I think there's two critical things. The first thing is its flexibility, being able to have both like waterfall, agile, marketing. Like we have all those things. We're a self-contained studio, so we have a variety of different business functions in the team that I don't have to have separate tools for all the different departments. So that's one big thing. I can manage a budget in it.
Yeah.
I can manage a marketing plan in it. I can manage software development in it. So that flexibility is huge. We don't have to have 10 different tools to basically do the same thing. The other, I would say probably the most important thing, especially on the types of projects I've worked on over the years, when you're working on very confidential projects, is I evaluated other tools that they kind of give you some base set of functionality, and then you have to do tons of add-ons to like get it to do even basic things. Like, oh, you want a calendar? Okay, that's another add-on. And while for some businesses that may work, for businesses where you have confidential data, you have to get every one of those approved, and you don't know where your data is going necessarily, right? And that was just a non-starter for us. Like that would not even be an option. So I love the fact that Fabro has a base set of functionality that works robustly, and we got that software approved for us to use, and we don't have to worry about our data going to different places in order to just be able to use it, basically.
I mean, and because you are working on such confidential, sensitive projects, I'm sure the security vetting is a very high bar.
It is. Yeah, it's very, very extensive. So we can't even, I mean, working at big tech companies, of course, they're going to have really high standards. And
especially for a cloud-based tool.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as soon as on-premise, it's easier, right? The barrier to entry is a lot lower. We can use a variety of different tools that are on-premises that have our own server. The second we get into the cloud, it's like a whole nother ballgame. And so the fact that I've worked at companies that we were able to use it definitely speaks to the fact that industry standards for security are obviously a priority and are in the product now. So
and since I know where you're coming from, I mean, we're talking as AAA can be. We're talking as innovative can be, and I'm sure the IP restrictions and the IP security is incredibly high, and for Fabro to be able to pass that vetting, I think speaks volumes. I know that you have used Fabro in the past, and could you speak a little bit about your experience with Fabro?
Yeah, absolutely. So I evaluated dozens and dozens of tools. I mean, I went through the full gamut of all sorts of different things that we could possibly use. I know that implementing a tool is it has a lot of effect on the team. People don't really want to ramp up on multiple things or using a bunch of other types of tools for other purposes. So I put a lot of time and energy to figure out the right tool to use that would give us the capability that we needed. And after all of those, many trials of prototyping in various tools, because that's, again, the culture that I come from, is you build it and you see if it works or not. So that's one of the big things I appreciated about Fabro, is being able to bring it into the team and prototype it for even several months and see how it worked with the team. So that was a very important thing for us to be able to do. So being able to kind of bring it in and try it out, I found that in a team where you can say, let's try it for 2 months and see how it goes, I've garnered a lot more willingness to try something in that case. Because if you kind of come down and say, we're using this for the next 5 years, it's like people are a little bit like, I don't know, is it the right thing?
I'm sure I want to commit to that.
Yeah, it's like a commitment thing. So I found that kind of easing your way a little bit, showing a prototype to show, here's what it could be like. What do you think? That's one way I was really successful, being able to implement it in teams I worked on.
Besides just development, I think this is another key thing, and the thing I personally like about Fabro as an Agile coach, and talking about business agility, not just development agility. What other, specifically, what other departments, what other functions have you seen use Favro?
Yeah. So in terms of other functions I've used Favro, or ways I've used it that are outside the realm of software development, absolutely things like budget, like financial stuff, whether it is just submitting requests to be able to, approve budget. Is one way. Marketing has been probably a bigger thing. They have a lot of tasks that they have to perform when it comes to whether it's scheduling events or putting out a marketing promotion, social media stuff. There's a lot going on there. And if you're working in a smaller team that manages its own social media, then it's even more useful, because then we can really track everything. Events is another thing that we particularly, I have been on teams that have done that. And so that's a unique kind of, not as often.
Because running a game business, a game studio, it's not just developing the product, developing the game. It's especially nowadays. And there's, like you said, there's events, there's esports.
Exactly.
There's the marketing, there's social media marketing, there's so much, the budgeting, like just running actual business aspects. So the closer that all of those functions can collaborate, the better. Especially if you're really autonomous studio, which it sounds like you've been in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's part of a bigger whole.
I've experienced things similar to esports, where whether you're scheduling tournaments or you're scheduling different types of things that are actually with your user base or your community of users, being able to manage that, because there's a lot of logistics that go along with that kind of stuff. And so it's valuable there as well, where you can coordinate, different people, being able to add people from outside your company, if you have it set up that way. And so, those are some of the other ways I've seen it used. Yeah,
very cool. So, shifting gears a little bit to not just so Fabro's focus, but your time, over a decade in the industry, right? You've worked on some very cool stuff. Cutting edge stuff. So I think you're uniquely qualified to answer this next question. How have your time in game development, how have you seen it change? Both from a technology standpoint, from a business model standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that I have more expertise on the technology side, so I can speak more to that. But moving to cloud absolutely has been a huge change in the way that we develop our products. I would say that by offloading the kind of burden of maintaining your own servers and things like services and things like that, we're able to focus more on core development, on developing the features, developing the services on the game side or the product side. As opposed to having to manage things that we don't really want to manage, or just aren't as good use of our resources in general. So I feel that that's provided a huge amount of agility, in terms of, just like, recently everything from, oh, we have a big thing coming up, let's scale up our server. And it like isn't a big deal. You can, increase your number of licenses or your capacity right away. As opposed to like 10 years ago, it would, be weeks or months to do something like that. So things have just gotten faster. I would also say that I haven't worked on a product that, was in development for 3 years and then shipped in a very long time.
Yeah.
So it's just not the way that I've operated in a long time.
And there are still teams that work that way, right? But it's becoming more rare.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the continued engagement with the IP is very important for a lot of products. And the philosophy that I've worked in for the last several years is really around how do you get the value to the users as quickly as possible.
Right.
So everything from shipping weekly builds and content to getting things out the door. Right now I haven't been on a product that doesn't ship at least every 1 to 3 months, if not faster than that.
So very continuous.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that you test that is totally different. The way that you get community and user feedback is totally different. The way you can look at telemetry is different. So I can literally, put out a feature, look at the telemetry within hours or days and say, okay, are people starting to adopt this? So, what's going on the service side, what's happening with our users, and we leverage a variety of different ways to get feedback on our products. And we've had real changes, I think, at least in the products that I've worked on, around engaging with the users much more closely.
Yeah, and obviously Fabro has been able to support those new business models, that faster feedback, that responsiveness to customer wishes, change, what they like, what they don't like. So we're getting towards the end. And again, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah,
very much appreciated. What would you say, getting back specifically to Favro, what would you say are the top 3 things that you like about it?
Yeah, I would say that clearly a Swedish design is a different level of just simplicity and just the interface being very clean. Working in a highly creative area, the creative team has a high bar for the interface they're expecting to use. And I work with UX and UI designers that have high standards, right? And I really appreciate the craft that has gone into the interface. You can tell that a lot of building simple interfaces to use is actually quite hard. It's easy to build something that's complicated and has like band-aids all over it.
Lots of those.
Yeah, absolutely. You can kind of look at some of the bigger tools that they just bolted, bolt-ons over the years, and you can tell that the experience is kind of disjointed in that way. As I've seen new features come out, I've seen them well integrated, put in a logical way. Even just being able to switch between like the timeline view and the kind of list view and the card views, and it's easy to use. So I really appreciate the interface. I think it's quite innovative in that way.
That's excellent.
Another thing that I really appreciate about Fabro is the flexibility that it has. Being able to work in a variety of different ways is very important, especially when you're working on very greenfield technology where you just don't know where it's going to take you. And then being able to onboard, other parts of the business is really great too. So I'm only training like everybody on one tool. So that's a big benefit that I've seen. Being able to have something that is secure and something that does operate in the cloud is very helpful. Having to maintain your own servers and things like that, which can make sense for certain businesses, but you don't have a requirement like that. Having things have really high uptimes, it's always been available, reliable is very important. So having a product that, when there is a very high security standard and a high standard for reliability, finding something that can provide those things is great.
And you don't have to do the administration yourself.
Yeah, that saves a lot of time.
Yeah. So a little bit more like a twist to that last question, specific to being a producer, production, product management. Any advice there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one particular challenge that I've worked a lot with is, I work with people that are some of the smartest, and like we hire the smartest people in the world. So when you're working with the best engineer on, some really kind of niche technology, or just a team of people that really know their stuff, right? They really know what they're doing. And when it comes to building the products, in some ways you have to get out of their way in some ways, but then also lead in other ways. So that's a challenging balance, I think. So having flexibility, I think ultimately is the critical part of that. And what I mean by that is knowing when to lead and when to get out of somebody's way. To back off. So that has been something that you just kind of have to trial and error with people on your team, but then specifically paying attention to, were my actions effective? Did I lead that well? How was that meeting? How was that? And when you really pay attention to those things, you start to kind of gather information on, I'm being, I don't need to lead over here because it's already, I set it up and it's doing its thing. This area needs a little more attention and leadership. So over the years, I've really learned to focus my time on really where it's needed and not try and boil the ocean and try and help everybody all the time. And it just, that doesn't let you scale.
It seems like you figured out maturity levels and that concept of situational awareness.
Yes,
you know what situations to lead, what situations to maybe advise. You can adapt based on who your experience with that person or group or team.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're like more junior producer, for example, getting hooked up with potentially a more senior producer on the team and observing how they're doing that in the culture that you're working in is something that I've done over the years. When I was more junior, I had an executive producer I worked with, and I really observed him quite a bit. And I saw like, okay, here's where he invested his time. Here's where he just let things go. Here's where he, moved mountains, and all that kind of stuff.
So it's good to have a mentor.
But I think like, someone that really is on your team is more useful, in that particular case. And it can be someone that is in your discipline. It could be, somebody else. But I've learned more through mentorship, like kind of you're describing, than I would say anything else. I'm good at mirroring other people's strengths and sometimes weaknesses. But
I feel the same way. Well, anyway, that's excellent advice. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.